And behold, it's also perfect for meal prep. Alright, time to make some beef noodle soup. The cut of beef that we'll be using is beef shank. But specifically, the beef shank right at the edge where the tendon actually connects. Specifically, the SINEW. It's just another name for tendon. Now when you cook this thing for a really long time, this tendon will get super soft and has an awesome texture that we're looking for. Now we don't want just pure tendon, of course we'll be having a nice chunk of the meat as well, but with a lot of collagen in between. So when that melts, it's gonna cover all the meat and that's what's gonna make it super tender. So we're gonna give the fat a little trim and clean things up a little bit. Now the best part about this cut is that usually people don't really eat it in the West. So when you go and ask for it, the butcher might just be throwing it away. And if you ask for it, they might just sell it to you really cheaply, or hell, they might just give it to you for free. Cut these into sizable chunks, kind of like that. Now of course, if you can't find this specific cut, using just regular beef shin or beef shank works just as well. You just won't get as much of this gelatinous texture as much, but you'll get more meat, so that's awesome still. Set this to the side. Then we'll be cutting up a whole onion. Bit of vegetable oil. And we're gonna let this cook until it's nice and softened. Meanwhile, let's chop up some garlic. No need to be very precise with this, just a very rough chop. Ginger, give it a rinse so you can get rid of any unwanted visitors. We're not peeling it, since we'll be cutting it in slices like this. And we're going to use it to just flavor the broth. Time to get the spices. Oh, why is it always at the back of the cupboards? Oh man. We'll be needing quite a bit. Also, to make things easier and not let the spices float around, I like to throw them in a little tea bag. Well, I say little, but quite a big tea bag actually. Now then, the main culprits that I want to use this for is specifically for star anise and Sichuan peppercorns. These two feel like they disappear and at the same time are everywhere once you're done with the broth. So I like to take a bunch of bay leaves, kind of fold them in half, so, or like just crush it and throw them in. A few dried chilies. I'm not gonna make it too spicy this time around. And lastly, for cinnamon, I'm just gonna throw in the stick since it's nice and big, so finding it and scooping it out will be quite easy. Same thing goes for the ginger. So the spice bag is done. To secure this, I use a bit of twine, tie it around. And you got a nice spice bag. Now that the onions have been cooking for a little bit, throw in some of the ginger. And we're gonna let that cook for a few seconds, around 30. Then we'll be throwing in our garlic, as well as the main star of the show, doubanjiang, or chili bean sauce. This is basically the main differentiator for Taiwanese beef noodle soup. I like to just throw in 2 fat spoons and let that fry a little bit with the other aromatics. Let this cook for around 2 minutes. Then we'll be adding in a bit of soy sauce. Then we're going to follow that up with a can of tomatoes. I prefer canned tomatoes for this, mainly because it's already quite soft and you don't need to cook it down too much before continuing to the next step. Just crush these up, throw in the beef and stir it in. Add in some hot water so that it covers all the beef. Cinnamon stick, as well as the spice pack. Now, very important, give it a little taste test, which it did indeed need it. Awesome. Close the lid on it and let this cook on high pressure for around 2 hours. I find that cooking it more than 2 hours makes it a little bit too tender and starts becoming a bit gooey. So 2 hours is the perfect in between. I was thinking while it's cooking, I might as well make some noodles to go with it. Instead of using the pre-made store-bought ones, making them from scratch, they can be fun. And best of all, I got a little trick to show you guys with baking soda. Now we have here some regular wheat flour, around 2 cups, as well as a secret ingredient, baked baking soda. Now baked baking soda is regular baking soda that I've just baked in the oven for around a few hours. This changes the baking soda, making it way more alkaline. And this alkaline noodles is what gives it that iconic ramen texture. It also gives you that springiness and gives you a little bit more wiggle room to prevent overcooking. Now we'll be throwing in 3 eggs. And of course, if it needs more water or needs more eggs because it's too dry, just throw some in. And of course, if it's too wet, throw in some more flour. But I found that 2 cups of flour to 3 extra large eggs works just right. After kneading for around 5 minutes, and it's not so wrinkly anymore, let it rest for around 30 minutes to an hour. Very much depends on your vibes. Time to make the noodles. I've cut the dough in half. I'll be running it through setting 0 in 2-level increments until the 5th setting. Bought one of these noodle strainers. Gonna try it out. Ah, screw it, I'm just gonna put the rest there. I prefer to cook my noodles all at once and kind of use it as a meal prep. And I'll show you how to prevent it from sticking. Damn it, this kind of defeats the whole point of the strainer. Maybe I should have bought 2 of these instead. I've somehow got all of it. Here's a trick to prevent the noodles from clumping once it cools down. And that's legit just rinsing it with cold water. And when you want to heat it up, just throw it in with a hot broth and you're good to go. Once the 2 hours is up, let the pressure quick release. And there we have our broth and beef all cooked. Yeah, look how tender that is. First things first, we're going to be removing the spice pack along with the cinnamon, as well as any obvious pieces of ginger I can see. I'm going to separate the broth and the meat. We're going to do that by passing it through a sieve. This way we're able to store the broth and the meat separately. This amount of broth only lasts for probably like 1 or 2 meals, especially at the rate that I like to drink the broth. As for the amount of meat, I can separate that into further meals that I can have with either rice or any other starch. And seriously, this over rice, my God, it's amazing. I'm gonna store this in the Tupperware, and this will go into a fridge with the lid on. Okay, throwing it on a chopping board like this is a bit goofy of me, but it's time to heat it up anyways. So, I'm gonna throw it into a wok. Come on, there we go. Up, up. Amazing. The beef shin, I'm gonna use half of it, since we're keeping the rest for something else. Man, I'm excited for this. Ooh, that's a fat amount of noodles. Man, this is a glorious bowl of beef noodle soup. Mmm. Oh, so good. This beef is so tender. Man. Mmm. That's insane. This is the magic. That's pure SINEW, pure collagen, man. Mmm. Oh, that is the spot. Mmm. Man, I gotta sit down.